exciting things going on this week. It's still stuff behind the scenes, and I I know it can seem like a broken record about we're close, this, that, and the other thing, but we're getting there. Okay, we really are in financing. I know that's our final question here from everybody, and appreciate all of you getting on board to help us communicate better. I'm certainly in that camp of how do you give away the greatest resolutions to world's problems, and that's what we're doing. And we've had some interesting dialogue today. In fact, I'm right still currently kind of in the middle of a lot of this with respect to a lot of things going on. And one of those matters involves the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. I'll probably talk about that a little bit. But one of the biggest things that I want to make clear to everybody, because there's kind of this notion that goes around with Concentric that like we're out just asking for money to somehow just get money for ourselves or whatever. And that's just a fundamental challenge in business today anyway, is that people think it's just you're just out in it for yourself. And if you look at our business plan and see what we're doing and what we've done and what is encoded in everything we're about, is to go deploy our technologies for the benefit of other people. And we're aware of the fact that by far the greatest competitor globally to good infrastructure is doing nothing, right? The world is full of stories where bridges didn't get fixed, roads didn't get paved, water treatment plants didn't get built, power plants didn't get built, transformers don't get built for power plants to put power on the grid, I mean, everything. Food doesn't grow or it gets wasted, spilled. I mean, just on and on and on, right? And then everyone complains and says, well, they didn't do it, and the government, this, that, and the other thing. We're trying to stand in that gap and say, we'll do it. We'll build the plants. We'll run them. We'll take the financial. See, people don't understand all these things are our financial risk. When we talk about McKinley, we're taking the risk there. We've just needed this one bridge loan, basically a gap investment of 10% to just kind of go forward. And we've also developed technologies. Some of you guys know the details, the MPSU, the modular plant single unit. We have technologies today, right now. We've cracked the code. It's our Dariel 360 patent. I commented to Team Concentric today. I was up at near the Dariel Pass at the Russian-Georgian border, and it just clicked up there. Toledo and I were up there last winter, and 40 years of work culminated in we've solved it. We can take any fuel anywhere. It's omnivorous anywhere in the world. Garbage, sewage, coal, oil, gas, doesn't matter. Just put carbon into this machine and we end up getting graphene out, electricity out, liquid fuels, aquaponics foods, everything. Okay, it's just a really polymathic, conciliant, just doing more than one thing at once. The waste from one process serves the other. It's really pretty simple, very elegant. We've written about a lot of that. The document came out called More. We're talking about just having more, right? Let's live life more so we can get on with real living. And so it's just that mindset, and everyone's saying, when are you going to get money? When are you going to get money? You know what? There's money in the world today, and we've put a great business plan together. And this is kind of my shout out. And I told guys, anybody in the company, the deal is the onus shouldn't be on us anymore, right? What do you need to get good infrastructure? You need good technologies, good building, good science, clean, efficient, it gets permitted, all these different things. And you got people that know what they're doing. They can program control systems and do the autonomy and build these and get permits and do all this stuff. It's a huge list. I get people sometimes call in and say, oh, you don't know how hard it is to build a power plant. I said, you don't have a clue. We've done over 100 of them. And yeah, they are hard, but it's like anything. It's not so much that it's hard, it's tedious. You got to know what you're doing and lay out a game plan. We have all that. We bring all that to the table. I think that's what scares some banking people. They're thinking we're just a developer trying to flip something, and they're thinking, who's going to go build it? And said, that's our business plan. It's really comprehensive. And what I'm getting at there is we're bringing like 99.9% of this stuff. We even do the financial modeling. We show the profile. I mean, we're taking care of a lot of that and go in that direction. It's time for somebody in the finance world tie their own shoes and come to the table. We get people all the time right now saying, well, how do we do, who can get this and stuff? And I'm going to talk about it right now. The Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. Okay, I've been talking about them for several years here. I had the good fortune, during that COVID pandemic and the confinement that I had, I took advantage of it. I said, how can I emerge with advantage? And I read about a guy named Parag Khanna, Khanna, and he wrote a great book called The Future is Asian. And a lot of people are like, what's that about and everything. Think about it. You've got two countries, China and India, that represent 40% of the world's population, right? I got with Talita today because we've got developments in Pakistan and Nigeria and Indonesia and Bangladesh and America and China and India. We're still trying to talk to and everything. Do you know that the top 10 nations in the world, 10 out of 192 nations, represent, what was the number, Talita? 46% of the world's population, right? So basically, half the world lives in 10 countries. Okay. And we're talking to those 10 countries, and sometimes there's problems in them, right? And you know which ones you are: Pakistan, Nigeria, Ethiopia is number 10. There's different cases of genocide and all this stuff going on. We're going into the burning buildings because we think there's peace and plenty. Yeah, we don't need lost leaders, but we're willing to go to these places, and we've modeled solutions. And one of them that kind of provoked some of this today was Nigeria. We love you, Nigeria, with all your fraud and the fraudulent WhatsApp and Telegram accounts and everybody just trying to hustle you for $50, and whatever you do. You know what? It's sad that $50 from 50 different people in any given year, and you're living large. We're trying to change that and come in and say, there's a better way to live. You don't have to scam. You don't have to kill your neighbor. You can serve your neighbor. And we've offered some amazing business plans. And Kenneth Eagle, I appreciate, he says, are you making a proposal? Absolutely. We got another one in there, and some of you know exactly what it is. Phenomenal business plans. Using resources that are already there in clean, efficient ways, building up food production, doing all this stuff. And you know what? People say, who's going to do the funding and all this different stuff? And we talk for days and weeks with certain banking people all over the world. And right now, Concentric, on behalf of me and what I'm doing, we're telling all the bankers to either show up or shut up, because we're sick of the gaslighting. We're bringing great technologies, and here's what else we're bringing. The Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank for member nations, they have a mandatory bylaw that says if you apply for money for infrastructure that's reasonable at all, doesn't even really have to be green tech. We're building roads, ports, whatever. And guess what? All you guys who want to put our stuff into AI programs and ask around, we as Concentric Industries qualify for every ecological advantage. I run into it all the time. I'll run something, an AI thing, and they're like, just before it even listens to what I'm trying to talk about, I get this 40-page rampage about permits and the difficulty and everything. And I have to press the button and say, stop. We've already figured that out. We have pollution-free systems. Like we're just going to enter in the AI thing and say, oh, we want to go build a polluting power plant. How do we do it? Like there's this presumption of idiocy that goes on, and we're not idiots. We're trying to find, if you or anyone you know is a smart person and they're involved in money, have them get a hold of us. We've put together a phenomenal construct, and I'm realizing I'm running my head into the wall trying to explain a great thing to people who are like, well, then what do we got to do? Well, it's like you got to show up. Because the AIIB, to apply, you got to be a member nation. Well, over 100 nations in the world are members. They have trillions of dollars. The reason I read about it is the Western banks are freaked out about them. And you know what? I'm sitting here working on something now. Georgia's a member, because they're in Asia. You're right. Eurasia, and then, Israel is, I was looking at stuff there, Azerbaijan, all these other entities, Oman's there, everything else. You know what's wild? There's some European countries are. Spain is a member. So is Finland, right? Jocko, we're talking. And yeah, if you're a non-regional, I forget the exact term they give, because there's a bunch in Africa and down in South America too that are members of AIIB, and there's different rules there. Like basically, and again, like we say, how does it all work? Do we as Concentric have to solve everything for everybody? What we're saying is there's programs like the AIIB that basically, and we've talked to AIIB officials, and they're like, yeah, this is great. What you guys are doing is great. They're kind of laughing at us, saying, if it's so good, why don't these guys call in? We're like, we don't know. We're trying to get them, because basically the AIIB, you have to be a member nation. And the way it works is they put money in. It's not a very old thing. China developed it. It's a brilliant thing. I've given speeches on it. And before you get too far ahead on the Belt and Road Initiative, and if you guys are Americans or you're in the West and you're freaked out about it, you kind of should be. because the program's sort of showing you up, right? If you haven't read John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman, read it. If you want to be involved in dialogue and be part of Concentric Industries, people think, what can I do? Well, first of all, get educated. I told people in our comments about what's the thing, the blockchain. I was given the deal about the tokens and all that we've gone through with it. I said, you know what they ought to do for KYC and blockchain? Make it mandatory that you read Creature from Jekyll Island, the documentary about the Federal Reserve, because you'll understand that. And it's not a conspiracy book. It's just setting out the facts for what it is. Because the Federal Reserve is not a public company. The name infers that it is. It's not. It's a private bank, and they did a great thing. I've been educating Toledo a little bit. This is the fun things we talk about. It's crazy about the Marshall Plan. See, in the wake of World War II, everything was in shambles, right? Just like World War One, and they kind of learned there that hey, it took us a while to get back on track, and by the time everybody else had such a hard comeback, I mean, I'm not going to go down this whole big dialogue, but one of the reasons Adolf Hitler was able to confuse the masses with some messed up focus on things is because Germany got shanked at the Versailles Treaty after World War One. So they were already like, hey, wait a minute, why'd we get such the cold shoulder? We were part of the Hamburg deal, and it was kind of a feudal thing. And then there was the assassination down in Bulgaria. I'm just they've changed the names. Not was it Belgrade, Yugoslavia at the time. And the Prince of Austria was assassinated, and that kind of catalyzed it. By then, they'd had the Bismarcks, and everybody had the military involved. It was kind of a fight between some relatives that were kings and queens in Europe. It was like, holy crap, the military's got to go. And then people blame like the Rothschilds and say it's a military industrial complex. It's the way things go. The voids get filled. When there's a vacuum and an opportunity, people are looking to do something. And some of them rightfully thought there was something to fight for. And, if you look back, there was like Lawrence of Arabia. And this might get controversy and people can say this and that, but it led to the breakup of the British Commonwealth, right? Look at all that. I was looking it up. What was it? India. 1947, and in Bangladesh, or there was something else. A lot happened in 47, 48, after World War II time. But same thing in World War One, a big shakeup. Ataturk in Turkey kind of said, hey, let's westernize. And that kind of changed the face of the planet. Recep Erdogan's kind of coming back on that because they see things in the West that aren't quite moral and everything. And everybody wants us or them. It's not really a bipolar world anymore. I've been here living close to Russia. I'm kind of digressing here, but Russia's got some terrible resource stewardship. That's where we as Concentric get involved in politics because politics have to involve resource stewardship. And there's some messed up policies that go on, and here's Russia just constantly harassing one of their 15, former Soviet affiliates,
It should be on.
Can you guys hear me now? Can you go check and see if you can hear me? Sorry about that. We're trying to make it better. We're going to get some. I keep saying that, and we will here. But is it on? Fix. Okay, thanks. Yeah, Jamie, I will. I'm going to go back. Well, can you hear me though on yours? Can you tune in and see if you can hear me?
Just switch it. Okay. Just for
Hi, thank you. Appreciate it, everybody.
all right.
Okay, let's see if I'm back. Toledo's going to go listen. You can hear me now? Could just be the battery of the speaker. We're trying to keep them charged. Sorry about any of that. Okay, I think we're back on hearing now. Good. Okay. So if somebody can give me please 5 or 10 minutes ago, what was I talking about? I kind of digressed into the AIIB. Good. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. I was talking about the AIIB and making a connection. And this is an important talk here today because we're kind of making a tack as a company because sometimes you get to a point and say, you know what, we've done enough. Now we need to kind of push, maybe it's pushing a rope a little still, but we need to raise awareness to people that we've set the table for you. You know, it's like what Concentric has done today as of right now, we have brought a full plate. Dinner is served. Okay. And what we're missing is the resources to get either the guests into the table or else we got to box it all up and go deliver the food, right? Everything's there. We've prepared the meal. We've prepared a banking structure that's it's infallible. It's work, and it's not infallible because see, guys say like, is that a guarantee? I want to make this clear to everybody. Nothing's a guarantee in the world. It's why there are some insurances that aren't just scams, like earthquake. They call it acts of God. Isn't that funny? It's like terror, floods, whatever. Things happen, and you insure companies for that. And that's why insurance companies make a lot of money because sometimes they have to pay those things out. And any responsible company, you get that. So things can happen. But what I'm talking about is a financial discourse. First of all, Concentric's business plan is based on things people already buy every day. It's amazing how sometimes people come to, what about the markets? How are you going to sell food? How are you going to sell electricity? How are you going to sell graphene nowadays? I was just talking to a guy about that. I forget which one because we get into that dialogue, and at some point I say, stop. We're looking at becoming the end user and buyer, right? There's so many opportunities in graphene that haven't been explored really because nobody's made enough material. And we've said it till we're blue in the face. Our markets for graphene are in the low end, selling to cement kilns, roadbed, whatever. And it's still worth hundreds of times more than the electric power. Okay. And then guys say, what about the graphene spec? Yeah, we're rebuilding to come up and build some equipment in series. We found out just a couple weeks ago that there's some thermal processes, again, some even aerobic, where they're able to make low-cost graphene sustaining a high temperature for an extended period of time like you can do with a flame. So in some ways, even to make quality graphene that's usable and sellable and valuable, you don't even need that short burst of high heat and then get it out of there. Which the reason why it hasn't been produced, because here's the catch. If everybody's wondering, like, why isn't everybody doing this? It's because you need a lot of electricity for a short instant in an anaerobic condition and then take the heat away. You can't really typically do that with a thermal flame, just pull it out. It's why, as a case in point, if you're ever there, if you have a solid fuel power plant, okay, like boilers for coal or garbage, there's mandatory requirements under fire protection code and ASME and everything where you have to have a diesel driven or even a steam turbine driven fire pump. In fact, it's both usually is what you have to have, or feed water pump also. And the reason why, because you can have a plant totally shut down, but you still got fuel in the box, right? That's going to burn, whether you move the grate or not. You're going to have stuff burning in there. And if you don't keep water going in there, stuff's going to explode. And that's happened. Okay. So that's the whole issue. So here's the deal. You got to keep feeding water in there if you're making steam. Well, in our case, we're not making steam directly. We're just pyrolyzing the fuel without oxygen to turn it into other things, including the byproduct of the graphene. And that's how we sustain those temperatures. And again, it's the same thing. It's classic. Most of the people involved in graphene are like, well, there's a big electricity expense. And that's what's helped, just like they say about aquaponics, right? Vertical farming. Oh, you got to have LED lighting and then the thermal energy, right? That's what Elon Musk or Kimball Musk came out. Are you noticing a theme here? Data centers. What do you need? Electricity. See, everything. We don't have it. We don't have it. There's not enough, not enough, not enough. And what's the missing link all the time? Electricity. I've taken a beating. See, I love electric power because humanity does need it. It is awesome. From the light bulb like the one behind me to running electric motors, it's an amazing discovery. I love Michael Faraday, Nikola Tesla, amazing stuff. Rudolf Diesel, I mean, some of my heroes, guys involved in creating rotating machinery. And all these different things don't have enough electricity, do they? Well, guess what Concentric does? We build power plants. It's what we've always done, and we're always going to keep doing it. It just so happens that you can argue over the value of the electricity. You got bad selling prices, or utilities don't pay this or that, whatever. We've transcended all of it because the graphene, the byproduct of our process now. And why were we pursuing that process? The byproduct's worth more than the electricity because we wanted something more efficient. See, and the whole deal is break the fuel down first, solid fuels, so you don't have to burn a solid fuel. So then you can process a gas or a liquid fuel that's easier to contend with, right? Directly in an engine or turbine, sell the fuel, sell the gas, whatever. You just convert it into something more transportable. And it just so happens that these anaerobic processes that we've been working on since the 90s with Wheelabrator and other, gasification plants, Destec in Louisiana and up at the Wabash River plant in Indiana. And some of you guys in the industry, you know which ones we're talking about. We've been involved in all this stuff. In fact, funny stories keep happening in power. It's weird. The company that owns the Moss Landing plant that we were involved in building and testing, back in early 2000s and stuff, turns out that it's a gas turbine plant, combined cycle plant. The current owner apparently had taken out two of the phases, the older parts of the plant, and put in this, like $1 billion lithium ion battery system that just last year caught on fire and burned for 5 days. So they got billions of dollars of liabilities, and we're coming in and saying, hey, look, we'll take your stack gases from the remaining gas turbine plant. And we know the plant because we built it, the frame 7 gas turbines, and we'll take that exhaust and turn it into $1 billion of profits and work some sharing with you so you guys can stop your financial bleeding. They had insurance policies, but they're getting sued and all kinds of stuff going on at that plant. And it's a great plant. It's right there in Monterey Bay. It's almost like a national park setting. They'd probably never get a power plant permitted there again, but California needs the electricity. So we can come in and offer some of that. So one of the things going on with this AIIB program is that the West had kind of said, oh, it's just debt trap diplomacy. They're making bad debt terms to other countries. And I was telling Talita today that through The Economist, a magazine I was able to get a hold of, a long time ago, several, last decade, really, when I started reading that. And some guys say, well, The Economist, this and that. I'll tell you one thing I'll give to that. Yeah, they take different political positions on some articles, but in general, they're reporting on a lot of things, and so at least you can find out some things that are going on out of that magazine. And the basic long and short of it that had happened with respect to what's going on with that is that Parag Khanna was quoted, and books he'd written were book reviews given by him about his books, not by him, but about him, including The Future is Asian. And one of the things that I felt was really important about that was that as I read that book, he spent a couple chapters talking about the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. And he basically explained how it was a purposeful development with the East, China, India, other initial member nations. And really, it's kind of gone all around the world now. I just mentioned a minute ago, some European countries are members. And basically, it was saying, hey, there's a need for a new banking system because the dollar-based system, and everyone wants to make it political and value-based and everything. But the reality is just that Marshall Plan mentality of the debt trap diplomacy that was practiced through that. You can read Perkins' book, awesome book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I remember when I first read that, it was like, because we knew John. I never met him personally, but we were his company was a client of ours early in my career because he got into power generation. He was involved in infrastructure dialogue, and he talks about that in the book a lot. And he was involved with, he ended up, when he got out of what they were doing there, he worked for a group out of Boston, right, fresh out of college, and they would do classic things where they'd go to like Indonesia or Ecuador or Chile or whatever, different countries, and they basically do an analysis of what they needed. I call it a resource policy optimization report. What they would call it is like a gouging the country. We're going to determine where they need stuff, and then we're going to write up a document. And it really caught him because he'd write it up for, say, $20 billion that Panama needed. And his bosses would say, no, just bump it up to 30 billion. And he was like, well, what's that about? They only need 20. He says, don't worry about it. It all comes out in the wash. So the first time he's like, okay, that's just how they want me to write it. He's like a 23-year-old out of college, just doing that stuff. And then as he goes on, though, he realizes that what happened is the fine print in these loans would go out and basically say, essentially, we're going to help you qualify for this loan because we've got connections with the banks like the Federal Reserve, which again is a private bank, and his company Maine up in Boston, MAIN, not the nation or the state of Maine, but basically the long and short of it is they had relationships with um, the companies that were the private banks, including the Federal Reserve, who didn't need approvals or anything else, and they would just basically underwrite these, and the fine print would say, oh, by the way, we're going to take out the money is going to go to U.S. contractors to do the construction. And if you default on the loan, we take over ownership of the assets. And people say, why would they ever sign those deals where they grease the skids by just some of the money they'd use to pay off politicians? And so John had been involved in that, building some of the relationships. And he's like, and he'd go to some of them like Salvador Allende and some of the others, Jose Torrijos, and say, hey, look, these loans aren't really very good. I'm kind of getting out of the industry. I'm going to be leaving, and I'm sorry I kind of helped set this up, and let's see what we can do. And some people then the real hitmen came in, and there's a few guys got assassinated. And you can read about it because you can always see an assassination get justified because you create a villain out of the bad guy, right? It's just part of the narrative. So there were guys who were actually, just trying to get their countries back together, and we'd throw what we call sanctions, everything. I'm not saying everything they've ever done was, bad or whatever. And certainly there's, bad actors around the world and different tyrannical regimes. But the bottom line is we'd be going into places. America would do the debt trap diplomacy. It was part of the program. And the Fed, being a private banking group, would just underwrite these loans, and then they'd get stuff back and they'd own the assets. Panama Canal is still very controversial in that regard. Japan got involved, in the last couple decades, and that kind of threw a wrench in things for them. But what happened is China coming along and other Asian countries said, hey, we need a better banking system that has more money. It just sheer numbers. So, and what really tipped me off to it is Nairobi, Kenya, over in Mombasa on the coast, was taken out a loan with AIIB for some port construction. And I got a hold through The Economist what the numbers look like. And it was a pretty reasonable loan. And yeah, China got certain control of parts of the wharf and everything was part of the deal. But okay, so they're going to come and do business. They're trying to establish a trade partner, and they'll get first dibs on certain slots and slips within a large wharf or whatever. And they're wanting to do commerce, not just come in and pillage and take it away. And there, you can say the controversy. I mean, I've seen right there in Tanzania, Cuthbert, if you're watching, I don't know, is you had all the guys, China doing a lot of developments were coming in where they left. I think a lot of times for them, it was ecologically, they were not able to qualify because, they had different things going on with respect to their air permit stuff. They couldn't quite qualify. And so they walked away from a lot of developments from coal, oil, gas, a lot of different things in there. So here's what happens is I saw the terms of the loan in Kenya from the AIIB, and they were pretty decent. And Kenya was sitting there saying, what do you guys want us to do? China and the AIIB are coming in offering this $3 billion package for us to build up the wharf. And America's answer, it was a fascinating article, was they came in with like $180 million of like a grant program. And the guy in Kenya said, that's not enough money for, I mean, we're trying to build, we have some infrastructure to build. And I find a lot of people, I don't hear it so much in the East. In the West, I hear it all the time. People say, oh, it's such big dollars. And it's infrastructure. Stuff costs billions of dollars today to put in to keep civilizations running. I think there's this mentality, maybe in America, maybe, I don't know, but people hear a dollar figure and they think companies are run by one guy. Like, oh, he's got a token and he sits on his couch playing video games and made $1 billion. That's not what we're doing. These are real bricks and mortar companies doing real infrastructure to make the world run. And basically, the AIIB has a mandate, and out of trillions of dollars they have available, to basically fund their member nations. And the qualifying things that are like an axiomatic, speak for itself, automatic qualification is a reasonable request for infrastructure improvements. And so again, yes, Concentric Industries, everything we do is ecologically and socially beneficial. So we automatically are going to qualify, just like we have in a blanket approval through McKinley, the Singaporean, strategic banker. So bottom line is all these countries like Nigeria, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, even Finland, Spain, Israel, Nigeria, I said maybe about 20 African countries kind of thin out, same as with South America. There's a lot of companies in reserve to join. Indonesia, Sri Lanka, I mean, basically India right there. I sent out to some of the guys in India. We've been horsing around with those guys. They can't find the money, do all this. And here's our message to everybody now, because we're still dealing with some private people and we're going to cross the finish line with a whole bunch of them. Okay. And we're going to do this. It's going to get funded. It's just natural way of things for people to build what's needed. I mean, I know out of COVID, everybody, people, everybody can work from home now. We don't need to do anything. Stop it. If everybody in a society works from home, it means nobody's making anything and the society is going to fall apart. Hello, America. Come on. Like, oh, this is great. I can stay home and just do it all on a computer or whatever. No, yeah, there's certainly some IT people, and that's great. Good for you. It's awesome. And I get it. It's part of the telemetry that we have within our plants, the control systems. We're going to, we tell our millwrights and technicians, hey, you guys know when stuff's working. You can do it. Schedule your weeks out. Do your predictive maintenance on Monday and Tuesday and take Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. Yeah, during those times, you're going to be on call and have your thing. But if you're doing your predictive maintenance, nothing's going to break. And then take your turn. So literally, guys can be working 20-hour work weeks and making bonuses because the plant's running more efficiently. How do you monitor all that? Through your smartphones now. You can get performance statistics on any piece of equipment, whatever. There's all kinds of that. So we use it too to make life better and all this other stuff. Predictive maintenance is way better than preventative and certainly better than after the fact. Okay. So with that, all these other countries out there, and I know, see, because there's this mindset and it dawns on me sometimes. And I'm kind of, sometimes I feel like I'm shadow boxing because I know there was a lot of back chatter within the blockchain space, a lot of hate. And a lot of that came about because we're trying to raise capital through the blockchain to have our working capital go out and build the real business. And our lack of capital caused a lot of hate and discontent in that space, wrong atmosphere and environment. And I take full responsibility. I'm still standing. I'm here dealing with it every single day of all of it. But I'll tell you that I said it before, the blockchain space, I love blockchain currency. I love it so much. I minted my own. And I had so many people mint a currency, you're just faker and everything else. Well, we're not. We have a real business, and this is a real token in a real business. And yes, we're in a rebuild mode. And I thought it would be a good way to raise a little bit of capital and have some working funds. It did not turn out that way. And all of you, if any of you are listening, I get 30 calls a day now. People, oh, I just want to help out. Give me 10 SOL or 1/10 of a SOL, $10 in SOL, $100, $1,000 SOL. And it's like, no, we're not doing that anymore. There's a couple of you that are doing a few little projects here and there, and we're working things out. But stop. Don't even bother calling because we're not a cryptocurrency company, right? And even if we built up the token a lot, you don't even, in this market, you don't even let us sell it to raise capital. That's what we tried to do back with the other token. And the guys managing it wouldn't even let us get to our own token, and they dumped it instead. And there's a lot of stuff people say this, that, and the other, and what went on controversy. That's exactly what happened. There was a couple $100,000 in market cap that was there for sale. And they were like, no, if you just go sell 100 grand worth, it's all going to collapse. And so they kept those tokens. We went and sold like 7 grand worth to cover some operating expenses. And they said, oh, you collapsed the whole market. And you can call and we could have the debates. I'm not going to debate anymore. Mathematically, that's exactly what happened. And we've been, we could have, and that's the thing, is in this space, if you are in the crypto space and you're trying to raise capital by selling stock in your company, you're called what, a rug puller, a whale, or what, all these stupid things. No, that's called free enterprise capitalism, but it's so far removed because people don't know the law, Frederick Bastiat, about economics. In fact, the book, uh, The Creature from Jekyll Island, will teach you about some economics, and it's about free enterprise economics, about the leaders and producers reinvesting and going to do things. And so the AIIB is pretty cool because they set out for this infrastructure. So if you're a member nation, you can just make a reasonable application, but it has to come from the country. And I think it was Jocko, you asked, does it have to come from the government? And the thing is, I don't really know because I'm not an AIIB member. I'm a U.S. citizen. So they're not. I mean, I'm just reading about this stuff everywhere I can. And we've talked to some of the officials, and basically it's like, yeah, the government applies, but it doesn't cost them. They've already, to become an AIIB member, you have to make multi-million-dollar investments, and you get a subscription, so you have a certain percentage of it. So you're limited on what you can even borrow down the road. It's going to be a multiplier. You put 100 million in, you can probably, I don't even know the method. It all, they analyze it all, but it's a lot. Okay, it's enough for us. We've got this $100 million threshold, get $10 million. Every single member of the AIIB can borrow 10 or 20, 30, 50, $100 million. Easy. I mean, that's a given. Can a non-Asian group like Nigeria, yeah, they were one of the main guys going in, big country, population, dollars. I'm just throwing a number out. I think Botswana is trying to apply. I think they are a member, actually. I'm not going to check right now, but they're like one of them on the fringe. Maybe they put in $10 million so they can qualify to borrow 100 million, kind of smaller scale compared to the $1 billion things, but they're a member, certainly big enough to qualify for this program. And we talked to these banking guys who are trying to do other stuff, and it just drags on and on. And that's my message. If you're a financial broker, get in the game, get better at what you do. And a lot of you, if the deal you closed 20 years ago and you set you up for life and that's enough, that's fine. You're free to make your own decisions. But tell developers like us that, hey, I don't really care. I don't really care what program you bring. I'm working with so-and-so Charlie Van Sant over here. And if he's got money and we can work it out, we'll do it. If not, no big deal. Because if that's your attitude, then say it, because we're sitting here breaking our back, scrounging all over the world, putting our business model into ththese programs like the AIB, a multi-trillion-dollar organization, catering our business plan to that type of thing. And then we see Fred down on the street corner banker, like, well, you guys don't qualify for stuff. And we're trying to say, you know what? What do you want to do? People dying in landfills. Nobody has electricity, power's out, water quality's bad. At some point, it hurts bad enough, and you say, what are you going to do about it? And what we're trying to do, if you look at our business plans too, everybody wins. We're offering. Can you? Maybe I got to press the button every now and then. We'll get it. Yeah, you guys, I'm sorry. Are they charged? Yeah, they're charged. We'll get it figured out. We're going to get a microphone and get everything set up. I keep saying gonna get it, but it's still just like the fireside chats. Can you hear me on your thing? I can take this out if I need to. What? It's okay now? You got about 25 to 20, call it 20 minutes left here. I want to wrap up on this AIIB stuff. Okay, you can hear me again. Good. Yeah, it must just be. How's that, everybody? Is that working? This is just straight away on my iPhone. Can you go see if you can hear me? You guys are, I'm really sorry about that. We'll do some R&D on audio. I know that if I have a MacBook Pro, but when the microphone on it doesn't do great. So the phone is better, I think, but okay, looks like we're coming in now. So I'm just straight away over the iPhone. Might be kind of rough, but I'm not too far from it. But what I want to, and we'll kind of wrap up with, I'm talking on this funding stuff, because that's our juggernaut. Because you guys know that we've been sitting here for, months now. Like, wow, we got signed deals, we're trying to raise capital. Blame me, maybe I present it wrong, we're looking for bridge money, doing things too good to be true, we get all kinds of weird answers. Well, the reality is, though, it's dawning on me right now, what we have is more than enough, and we've packaged it more than enough. If banking people come in and say, well, we're not really comfortable, we don't understand how we could get a return so quick out of McKinley, and then we're not sure how to the AIIB, and then you guys take the risk and pay us back and all these other things. You know what we're saying, and we're trying to tell our team, and I guess I'm trying to get this message out to everybody, tell the banking people to just get in the game. We can't do everything for everybody. I can't sign AIIB papers, right? I can't do that. But I can bring those people to the table, but they have to show up. And that's the question, is at some point, do you want it bad enough? And that's I think it's one of the challenges in infrastructure money, is you have people with jobs, and their job depends on that there's a need somewhere. And so there's almost this thing they don't want to close. It's just weird. There's some weird dynamics. We need to cut through that, because there's massive commissions to make. I guarantee you AIIB people are going to make a ton of money. When you start getting like fractions of a percent on $1 billion, you can make bank, bro. Like Will Ferrell on was it the Catalina wine mixer on Step Brothers? I want to make bank, bro. Go sell something big ticket and get a 1% commission on $1 billion and see how that works. And it's why economy of scale hits infrastructure. Because the sales broker, accounting people, they're the ones who drive that. Oh, the deal better be big. I'm not going to go down and do all the legal and accounting work for $1 million project, because then my commission's only $1,000 or something. But you do that for $1 billion project, guy makes $1 million. And how much time did it take for the lawyer to do the permits on a big plant versus small? Same, right? Right? That's why that's I found. It's a big reason why infrastructure goes these directions of scale. The economy of scale myth. Well, it's true. There's truth to the economy of scale. I don't have an outlet like that. That's part of the problem. Talita's trying to get at it. My iPhone doesn't have that. She had another speaker. Thanks, babe. I appreciate that. But yeah, there is no jack for that on iPhones. So the point I was trying to make there is that the economy of scale challenge is real, and we've solved that on a technical point as well by having these modular plants now.
And how I set out to solve the economy of scale problem years ago is create more revenue. Have more revenue streams, and then you can have a smaller plant that still sustains profitability. And that's all we've done. It just so happens that we make the profits out of otherwise waste streams. So we're telling, I mean, that's another thing we're trying to get out there is everybody can have their own carbon credits, which, you know, ironically, they're worth as much as the electricity too, and we can give them away. And I'm tired of people saying, well, it's too good to be true. No, it's too good to not check out. Come check it out with us, you know? And that's part of the deal. See, we're not trying to raise money to get 10% to go into McKinley so we can run off with 10% of the money. We're in this to build plants and get the 100% back out, and then, yeah, it'll generate revenues and we can be our own 10%. I keep trying to, because I run into this too. This is part of the financial thing. Because people say, well, Garrett, you need to change your website, or you need to make it simpler, you need to tell people, and nobody knows about electricity, and they just turn the switch and they don't care, and blah, 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 you know, and all this stuff of what people know and don't know. And yes, I know that I know probably, I've always thought about the way things work, and I like to know how things work. Okay, from airplanes to machinery to equipment, I've always been interested in that, and I like to optimize things and whatever. I know that makes me different. I've learned that the older I get, but at some point, this is not crazy stuff, guys. We're making electricity, food, air, and water products. Graphene is another material. People make cement, steel. I mean, come on. You know, it's just, this is ludicrous how deeply we have to go in these explanations, and it's our fault for not explaining it properly, blah, 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 blah. We need to talk to the right people, and that's part of it, our responsibility to get in front of the right people. But at the same time, we need to tell the right people that they still have to show up. If it was too good to be true, you wouldn't even have to show up, bankers. You know, but you gotta show up too. You gotta make a call. You gotta make a call to the AIIB if you're a member nation, or call the politician, get to know that guy. Because this whole thing is not about Concentric getting money. The world needs somebody to get money to go solve some of these problems. Okay, and that's what we're set out to do, is go to work doing this. So that's how it goes here with this AIIB program. And again, I'm not an AIIB member, but and it's one of many. I mean, there's all kinds of, see, we even have loan offers beyond just McKinley. That's the thing, we have loan, that's why I keep advertising I need a CFO or someone just to financially engineer this stuff. But most financing today needs an equity portion. It's just the rules of engagement. You know, it's a weird industry. It's the only one in the world that consistently says, if you need what you're coming for, money, you have to bring money. And nothing else in the world's really like that, right? You know, what if you went into the weight room and it's like, man, I want to get stronger and I got to lift this much weight. They're like, well, you got to lift it first and then we'll let you in the gym, right? Like the banks say, pay for the plant, build it, get operating cash flows, and then we'll finance it. Literally, that's the mentality. Build the plant first, get operating cash flows that can create profits, and then we'll loan you the money to build the plant. That's literally the modern banking policy. And that's why stuff's not getting built. Not just us, others. We've got the guts to go out and try to keep pushing for it. And so this AIIB program really jumped out because the more I look at it, it's like, wow, we're just missing the wheel here. You know, what are we talking about? And I've been advertising, you guys have seen, it's been, you know, AIIB's been, you know, we talked McKinley, I mean, on its own, but we've brought this up for years, you know, that the AIIB would be a pathway for one of these countries to get that 10% and get it to move. And it's that simple. A country automatically qualifies, get your 10% loan. Let's say we're doing $1 billion project, or see the cool part, let me explain this too. We phase these projects in. People say, how much money do you need? As a bare minimum, our modular plant single unit's $20 million. Total installed cost. But if you do 5 of them and it's $100 million, you only need $10 million into the McKinley model, and we can have enough money to do 5. And roll money back in to do more while the money sits there, because you don't spend it all at once in construction. That's kind of McKinley's program. The money that you're not spending yet on construction is active doing things to make more money. So you basically get the loan paid for by the time the loan's even done being taken out. It's just aggressive, you know, not that it's even risky either, because it's not. It's about commodities every day. It's just smart people saying, let's manage it better. you know, and that's kind of what happened. So we got smart people in our company saying, here's the more efficient way to manage resources and generate things people need. Let's put the two and two together. And so the way that could work out is like, someone brings in 10 million, so we get the 100 million, or you got $1 billion project, say they get a $100 million loan out from the AIIB. Under our current McKinley structure, we get our first tranche back 30 days later, 30 business days later, call it 40, 50, 60 days, 2 months by the time it all shakes out. So 2 months later, like within 30 business days, they're getting the commitment to it. Then it transfers through the banking, you call it 40 days, you know, whatever. They get the loan back from us out of the first tranche. And then I tell people it's belts and suspenders and then on coveralls. Because the belt is we give them a contract, we'll pay it to you out of our first tranche. Second, suspenders are McKinley says if Concentric blows it, we'll pay you back. And then the coveralls are that, you know, Allianz and Lloyd's of London Insurance say, hey, if they all just walk away, we'll pay you back no matter what. So it's like you got a 60-day bridge loan that's guaranteed to be repaid back triple over. And the message is these countries can go to AIIB and get it, not just freelance and do whatever, but because it's for a good project. It's for stuff that they need to get done, and that's in their bylaws and charters. It's like the modern day Marshall Plan, but it can continue. It doesn't have to wait for a war. It's like anybody who needs anything, go in and get it. And there's a lot of countries using it a lot. Kazakhstan's one of them. Or Uzbekistan has too. You know, others are they're just there because they figure to be smart, we'll use it. So they can take that money out, get it back, and then all the loan and everything else is on our shoulders. And then we go build the plant and offer these people revenue sharing. And people say, wow, it's too good, you know, what are you doing? Yeah. You bring in that 10%, and we got deals going on all across Europe now where like just 3 of them, and it was called Eurasia Coal. In Finland, Germany, and Poland were the 3 main ones, and they're all over, but some major coal plants that are getting ready to close because they just emissions or whatever. So we come in and say, hey, look, you can keep all the carbon credits, so what used to the selling price of electricity or whatever, you're gonna get that double over again on our back. But we'll put in our modular systems, and it turns out that we can do it in like, this is a frame of reference, I think 2 of them had 6 phases, 1 had 5. It's just even numbers of stuff, but basically like each train, we called it, would be like 5 reciprocating engines, you know, 15 or whatever, how the math adds up, modular pyrolysis units, and just kind of a package deal for say $250 million. So just as an example. So they bring in 25 million, we get the 250 million to build phase 1. And as we're building phase 1, we're rolling money back in the McKinley program for phase 2 already. And so they put in 25 million, like 10% of phase 1, and we'll give them 10% ownership in the whole plant, and they never have to invest anything. Nobody else ever does again because it just rolls out continually till we get all 6 phases built. And then we have a full-blown plant with no pollution, and it's paying for itself with the graphene production also. And they get to replace and get a better than a base load plant that they had before because we have multiple generator sets now. So there's redundancy built in, which is music to the ears of planners. But power plant guys don't want it. You don't want to have a whole bunch of engines. But again, the electricity is our byproduct now, really. Graphene drives the show on the economics. And so basically, we're looking for one entity anywhere in the world who's got people that can get out of bed, okay, and go to the AIIB and say, hi, we're one of the 110 member nations in the world, over half the world, and we would like to apply for a loan for a necessary infrastructure improvement in our country. And we have contracts on the table from McKinley and Allianz and this Concentric group, who's a startup coming out of some headaches they had last decade out of America, but they built a bunch of plants, and but it's not about their balance sheet. They're going to come build this project, and they got insurance people behind them and everything. And then, and everybody talks, they finally get together, they show proof of funds, the government does, show proof of funds, McKinley goes to work, puts a special purpose company together, money goes to an IOLTA account, 30 business days later, the money's moving around and everybody goes to work, and then it just rolls on itself. We are looking for one entity in the world, because we've talked to virtually every nation, we've modeled stuff for over 100. and we've got contracts with dozens. So you guys know who you are out there, from Germany to Finland to Botswana to the Gambia to Indonesia to Philippines to USA, Mexico, Canada, Toronto, just England, Wales, just Ireland, North Ireland, just you name it, Hawaii, Samoa. I mean, it goes on. We can go we built technologies that I can tell you right now, I guarantee it. 100% guarantee. I will guarantee this with my life. We can go to any country, anywhere on earth, and I guarantee you we can substantially impact the gross domestic product positively with some or all of our technologies. 100% guaranteed. The minimum requirement is that there's at least a few thousand people living there. Even the Vatican, we can do stuff, because I know they have round-the-clock loads. Our systems are small enough and scheduled enough like that, that we can do that now. Anywhere in the world, guaranteed. Our feasibility studies take 5 minutes. Are people living? Yes, we can do a project. And yeah, we run the numbers, and that's the thing. We wrote the book. You guys have seen it. I'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes. We called it More, was another thing that came out. Then I've got it, the Matrix. It's my pro forma for any of these things. And I'm starting to try, I've got a guy I'm meeting with. We're going to kind of write our own AI to simplify the process. But we've cracked the code. We can basically go anywhere, just quantify. How many megawatts do you need? What's the fuel? How much waste is there? How many livestock? How many, how much clinker, coal, cement production's another one. And nowadays you can just do the reconnaissance with AI stuff to say where are the power, then triple check it, find out where they are, but basically get the basic numbers and run it in our model, and we can put presentations together. It's so far advanced, and to be honest with you, I'm shocked no one else has done this. I'm gonna end this, I'll end on this one. Cheyenne, I don't know if you're there listening or we'll see this, but it was really cool. There's a scene, you know what, I can do it on Google. And I apologize, guys, I'm not gonna sit here and cob around. There's gotta be a way I can play, hey Talita, there's gotta be a way I can play a YouTube video while I'm talking on YouTube. I was thinking of that one with what it is it's a scene from Iron Man, okay, and it's Jeff Bridges and the scientist he's hired. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm gonna do some practice, trial and error, because I'd love to be able to play this one. And it was cool, and it was kind of fitting. It was a strange moment, because he was telling me, like, man, you're like the Iron, you're doing stuff that is impossible. Nobody knows how to make it work. Let me see if we can do this. We've got a couple minutes left. We're just in the 1 hour mark. We'll come back, but what I want to tell you is this deal, the storyline in it, and I think most everyone, if you're, most everybody, try this, we'll do a Google search, get some help on that. And we can post the link, but what I'm thinking is to play something in real time. What I'm getting at, we'll figure it out. If anybody's done it and knows the exact thing is, we can do it in Google Meets, right? Where I can show my screen and play a video, do whatever. I'd like to be able to do that here. Probably won't happen now, but I've already kind of spoiler alert on it anyway. It's after the Iron Man character, played by Robert Downey Jr., has already been in the cave and, survived all that and came out with the thing that kept his heart going, extra power, all the different things going on. And the Jeff Bridges guy has learned about it, and he's trying to duplicate it. And he's down in his lab, and they've got this energy production. And the guy's like, the engineer guy is telling him, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, it's impossible. Or we don't have the equipment, and the technology's not there. And Bridges turns around and says, no, the technology's right here, and they got this room full of stuff. And he goes, I just asked you to make it smaller. And the guy turns to him and says, it's impossible. And Jeff Bridges, in a great scene, a great actor, his tie flares up and everything. He's just like breathing down his neck. I can imagine how many takes they did of this, and he's just right in his face. And he's like, Tony Stark, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, he did this with pieces of scrap inside of a cave. And you just said it's impossible. And the guy just says, I'm not Tony Stark. And it's kind of a thing. So, and some of you guys know the story. I said to the thing, I wasn't exactly in a cave last decade, but I was out of, taken off the playing field. And I took that time to get better with some things. And what surfaced is some of our technologies. I've rounded it off with about 3 or 4 more patents that really kind of integrate ones we already had before. But they kind of polished them off, and it's a result of some work I did over the last decade while I was in a cave, so to speak. And that's the thing, is we really do have something that's super special. The Dariel 360 process is the culmination of what the world's been seeking. And I'm trying to explain it, that guys, it's simple, it's everything. And I'm trying to, I don't like to pull rank, because, you know, if you have to ask for respect, it means you don't have it. And so it's a hard, fine line there. But I want to just remind everybody, I am a professionally licensed engineer. I've won awards for my work. I've built as many power plants as less than about a dozen people in the whole world today. Okay, there's probably some retired guys who are in their 80s or 90s that are right there with that. Okay, so I didn't just fall out of bed. It's not an idea I just thought I had for a crypto coin or whatever. And I'm good at what I do. I passed the PE exam on my first try. I was 30% better than you needed to be to pass, and that test has a 17% pass rate even for people on subsequent times they try to take it. I'm really good at what I do, and I take pride in that, but what I'm trying to tell people is stop attacking us, me and Concentric. Give it a little bit of justification. Say, hey, maybe these guys have said, hey, the world's going to have really high standards to get stuff financed when they don't have a balance sheet anymore. Maybe they've done some creative things to make the financial part workable, right? Maybe we've done some things to make financing doable even though we don't have a balance sheet anymore yet. And it just so happens that what we've put together is a way we can actually make this work. We just need to find one entity in one place in the world. We've found them already. I'm fully convinced of that. It's just kind of a race to the finish line. And I don't want to let this AIIB thing just fall away, because realistically, any country in the world that's a member, if they get their ducks in a row and a guy gets off the couch, put down the potato chips in the video game, you white-collar guy who just sits at home and works from your underwear on Saturdays because you can, okay? And been there, done that, you know, it's great as a consultant, whatever. You know, I know how that goes. I'm a I R1 too. I'm a professional engineer. I've been paid thousands of dollars an hour just to do stuff on a sheet of paper and get a license or a permit. Okay, I get that. But what we brought together really does work, and these guys can go to the AIIB pretty quickly, get that money, and it doesn't come out of any individual's pocket. That's what I'm trying to say. This isn't about just, oh, we got to find Charlie who can shell out 20 million. That'd be great. I still think sometimes that's going to happen on the VC side. Some of you guys say, oh, we know venture capitalists, these guys have money. Well, where are they? Okay? Yeah, we could use one too. That would have shortcut a lot of this. But, you know, in the process, what did we do? We keep looking for better ways of doing things. Well, this is a good way to do something. The AIB has the money, comes back through McKinley, and all that's shored up. That has nothing to do with Concentric, the return on that money. And then, but then going forward, doing the work does. And what is the work? You guys know it's good work. We represent the future of energy, food, air, and water, and graphene for the whole world. Have a good rest of the weekend, east or west, wherever you are. Look us up, contact the company, go to the websites. We've got several of them. We've got 10 domains reserved now. We're going to make those available. The reason why we're doing that is just to have the language adjustments for every different regions of the world that we're getting a lot of traction in. So this is a great foundation we're building. And I'm going to end on that. I'm going to read. We do have. I'll post it up in here. It's posted. It's all over the place. I'll put it up in the X site and maybe on this. But ESG, because you guys who, if you're not familiar with that, this is kind of a requirement for any kind of green fund, including the AIIB. And it stands. It's ESG. I'm going to read off of one of our placards. Stands for Environment, Social, and Governance. It's a framework used by inventors to evaluate a company's sustainability and ethical impact. ESG performance is only now being coined by the mainstream. And it is so vital that Concentric had the prescience to invest the last 3 decades, setting the bar at unprecedented heights. No company with Concentric's global ambit and import has ever existed in world history until now, because we have the moxie to build foundations for the castle.